Hello, Mr. G here with another math video. This time we are going to explore percents and we are going to look at three different types of questions involving percent and how we approach them. So let's start. The first type of question we're going to see is if we want to calculate the percent of a number. We already have played with mental math and we can figure out a lot of numbers just using mental math. But there are times that we need to do the calculations. So these you may be familiar with. What is 72% of 248? Well, all we have to do is express 72% as a decimal and then multiply it by 248. So this would look like this. Multiplying 0.72, which is 72 divided by 100, multiply by 248, and we get our answer of 178.56. And all our answers are going to be rounded to two decimal places. So pretty friendly. What is 9% of 339? Similarly, we write 9% as a decimal. The only thing we have to be careful is that now we need that conversion to be done properly. So 9% is written as 0.09 or 9/100ths. Be careful not to make the mistake of thinking is zero point 0.9 because that would be 90%. So if we understand that, all we just have to do is this multiplication, this product. 0.09 multiplied by 339, and that is the value that we're looking for, 30.51. And we can also begin to make sense of the numbers in case we make a mistake, a calculation error. If I look at 9% is close to 10%, and I know 10% of 339 would be 33.9, so this answer makes sense. Okay, another one. This one is same idea, except that we have a decimal point in between. So in this case, we do the same process. We write 7.4% as decimal, and then we multiply by 176. So there it is. So 0.74 times 176 is 13.02. Now, what about when the percent that we're finding is greater than 100? Well, the process is the same. We convert the percent, in this case 115, to a decimal form. And we do that by dividing it by 100, like we've been doing here. And alternatively, we know that is equivalent to moving the decimal point two places to the left. So 115% is equivalent to 1.15. And then when we multiply that by 230, we end up with 264.5. And you can see that the value that we obtain is greater than 230, which makes sense because we are determining a value that is greater than 100%. And one last example here, what is 210% of 55? Similarly, we are going to convert 210% to a decimal, and it would look like 2.1%, moving the decimal two places to the left. 2.1 multiplied by 55 is 115.50, which we can see is a little bit more than double 55 because we're doing 210%. The next type of problems that we are going to find is questions where we know what percent a number is of something, but we need to find out what is 100%. So a question similar to this, 17 is 52% of something, and that's what we need to find out. In other words, we need to find out what is 100%. So we can determine that 52% is equivalent to 17. So for these, we're going to use the same idea that we used in the previous examples. We need to determine 52% of a number. So we would write 52 as a decimal, and we don't know the number. So that's why we write an X. We create a little equation that says 52% of X equals 17. In other words, we are putting this question into a mathematical form, into an equation. And we have solved equations like this before. In this case, the 0.52 is multiplying the x. So if we were to multiply 0.5, divide 0.52 on both sides, we end up with our solution. 17 divided by 0.52. So the answer is 32.69. That means that 32.69 is 100%, and 17 would be equivalent to 52%. Another way to look at these type of questions is this. We try to set up a ratio that tells me this. I need to know what is 100%. So take a look at how this ratio is set up. X divided by 100. That would be the number we're looking for, our X. And we know that 17 is equivalent to 52%. So this is just solving this proportion. Similarly to what we've done here, in this case, to solve for the X, we would multiply both sides by 100, and we end up with this. Multiply 17 by 100, and then we divide by 52. We arrive at the same answer, 32.69. So either method is good. We illustrate the following examples using both methods, and you can choose whichever method you find friendlier for you. What about this one? 121 is 85% of a certain number. So we need to determine what is this number. Similarly, like to our previous example, we know that we are looking for a number that multiplied by 0.85, or 85% of the number, equals 121. This is literally translating our question into an equation. And to solve, we would divide by 0.85 both sides, and then we find x equals 121 divided by 0.85, and our answer is 142.35. The other method would tell us this. I need to find a number that is 100%, and I know that 121 is 85%. So basically, we are finding the value that corresponds to 100%. And we do that just like we did in the above example by multiplying by 100 the both sides, but on the right side is the solution. 121 multiplied by 100 and divide by 85. And of course, the answer is the same. So setting up a ratio may be an option that gives you an automatic way to solve the question, because you always will set up x to 100. Of course, here you can multiply the percent as a decimal times x and solve. So whichever method you prefer. We're going to look at a couple more examples, or a few more examples of finding 100%, because some of these could be a bit tricky. So 35 is 7% of a certain number, and we're trying to find that number. So we know that 7% of a number is going to be 35. This, we have to be careful how we write 7% as a decimal, understanding that we're making it 100 times smaller. And from here, we just divide by 0.7, and we get our answer, in this case, 500. 35 divided by 0.07. The other method, it would be the same process. I need to find out x to 100. What is 100% if 35 is 7%? Notice here that we don't have decimals. Everything here is expressed as percents. So we don't have to convert to percents or to decimals. And then we would multiply both sides by 100, and this is our calculation: 35 times 100 divided by 7, which arrives at the same answer of 500. Now, 15 is 2.5% of a certain number. Very similar to the one above. The only cautious here is for us, when we write it as a decimal, the 2.5%, that we write it correctly. Notice how this is written: 0.025 of x times x equals 15, and then we would divide by the 0.25, and our answer is 600. Alternatively, we can follow this method that we've been doing. We're trying to find out x to 100. That would be the number we're looking for. And the ratio that we have is 15 corresponds to 2.5. Just like before, we multiply by 100 and arrive at the same answer. The last type of examples that we are going to look quickly of finding percent involve numbers that are bigger than 100. So take a look at this one. 84 is 200% of a number. Well, even though the numbers are different, the logic and the process are the same. We are looking for a number x that multiplied by 2 gives 84. Why 2? Well, 2 is 200% written in decimal form. So we realize that for 200, the decimal point is after the second zero. We make it 100 times smaller and we get 2. So this is our equation, which is pretty friendly. Now all we have to do is divide by 2 and we arrive at our answer of 42. Notice here that the value that we found is smaller because 84 is 200%, so it's double. And our other method, we set up the same way, x to 100, we need to find out what is 100 if 84 is 200%. Again, we don't need any decimals here. We just write what we have in terms of percent. And then we multiply both sides by 100 and arrive at our answer 42. 84 times 100 divided by 200. 93 is 125% of something. So let's analyze it the same way we've been doing the others. In this case, we need to express 125% as a decimal, and that will be 1.25. So 1.25 times a certain number is equal to 93. And to solve our equation, to find the x value, we would divide by 1.25, the 93 we have on the right side, and there is our answer of 74.4. Our other methodology, we set up the same ratio. If you notice, this setup is always the same, x to 100, because we're trying to find the number that equates to 100. It's 93 to 125. Again, everything is percents, no decimals here. And to solve for x, we just multiply across by 100 and we arrive at the same answer, 74.4. The third type of problem that we are going to find is when we know two numbers and we're trying to determine what percent is one number of the other. Something like this. 56 is what percent of 71? So in this case, we can think that 71 is 100%. And we multiplied it by something to arrive at 56. So we can think like this. 56 divided by 71 is going to be the percent that 56 represents because 71 is 100. And then we multiply by 100 and we realize that 56 is equivalent to 78.9% of 71. So this method that gives us the percent just requires us to understand which of the two numbers is the 100%. In this case, it's 71, and that would be our denominator. And the other one is our numerator. And we do this calculation, multiply by 100 to express it as percent. 72 is a certain percent of 269. Well, how do we figure the percent? I hope you begin to see the pattern. So we would just divide 72 by 269 and then multiply by 100 to express it as a percent. And that is 26.8%. Similarly here, 13 is a certain percent of 330. We would set it up in the same way. The percent we're looking for would be 13 divided by 330 multiplied by 100, so 3.9%. Now, this is interesting because in this case, we're asking 58 is a certain percent of 42. Right away, we can see that 58 is greater than 42. So our answer is going to be higher than 100%. So here is the setup. The setup is the same. We divide the 58 by 42 and then multiply by 100, and that gives us our answer. And we expected this to be greater than 100, and it is. It's 138.1. The process is the same. Divide the number by the one that is 100%. We're identifying which one is 100% and then multiply by 100. So here we have 176 is a certain percent of 60. So 60 is our 100%. That means that would be the denominator, and the numerator would be 176. We perform this calculation, multiply by 100, and in this case is 293%. We can see that this is almost three times. 176 is almost three times 60, which would be 300%. I hope this was useful and will help you solve problems of this type. Thanks for watching and see you next time.